Hello everyone, and very recently Creative Assembly confirmed the Glottkin as the next legendary lord for the Warriors of Chaos, not Nurgle. This is a very interesting point, but it is one of the last legendary lords for the Lords of the End Times DLC. Now, the Glottkin I always kind of expected because, well, the Glottkin have probably the best book out of the whole End Time series. Their novella was the best written, and it's good to see because I mean, it's tragic, they're really cool characters, and we are missing a fair amount of Nurgle stuff, which has been confirmed. You know, the Putrid Blight Kings are coming, and it's a very fair assumption that Gutrot Spume will also be coming too, which I'm very happy about because he's a very cool character. And I wanted to make this video because there's a few things to talk about, I think, more than anything else. It's not just about Nurgle and the Warriors of Chaos, because that was pretty interesting news, but some other matters too. First up, I saw some surprise that Nurgle was going to feature in the Lords of the End Times DLC. Well, you shouldn't really be surprised. Obviously, in Omens of Destruction, we had all the End Times Khorne stuff, so it made sense for a DLC to introduce the End Times Nurgle stuff. Only Khorne and Nurgle really got anything new during the End Times, which is kind of disappointing. But I mean, the whole series was disappointing as a whole, so who cares, right? At this point, we just gotta make do. I think it's kind of interesting, however, that technically Nurgle isn't going to be the leading faction here. Instead, they decided to go for the Warriors of Chaos. Now, Nurgle already has 3 legendary lords, but the Warriors of Chaos have had, what, 8 so far, leading to 9 playable factions. Now, this doesn't really matter too much because the Warriors of Chaos are very centralized, but it does mean that there are 2 Nurgle Warriors of Chaos factions, and now 2 Tzeentch as far as we're aware, because they did confirm that Sigvald was going to be updated to be more of a Tzeentch Warriors of Chaos faction. So there's a little balance missing. It doesn't really matter too much because Creative Assembly did actually outright state that there was no need for a full-on balance. This means that some races will have more lords than others, even if they're in the same culture group. So maybe we get another one for Khorne in the future, or maybe one for Tzeentch, but maybe not for Tzeentch. That's not their quote, I'm just using it as an example because we're going to talk about Tzeentch a little bit later. Creative Assembly are obviously going to be going around it for a different way. They've stated that the Nurgle factions will be very different from each other, meaning that Festus should not play the exact same way as the Glottkin. We do know that the Glottkin are going to be using more demons, so it's safe to say it's a bit of a reverse of what we've had for, say, Tamukan in Nurgle, where you're more incentivized to bring in mortals, but here you're going to be incentivized to bring demons. Hopefully it's going to be a steady way because the gift system is kind of slow. This potentially is quite good in the possible future for character packs if Creative Assembly want to do more reversals for Warriors of Chaos factions. Although I think we're kind of done with Warriors of Chaos factions. As much as I'd like more, we don't need them. There are too many lords missing from other factions, too little missing space for, well, the whole map at this point. Let's just be very clear. It's very clear that Creative Assembly are using this to take advantage of closing the hole for Chaos. You know, the Chaos Siege Giant, the Basilisk, they're looking at stuff which people have been asking for quite some time and going, okay, we're likely not going to have much more Chaos DLC, so let's get whatever we can out there ASAP. Well, this is just an assumption of mine, but let's be pretty clear here, right? There has been a lot. There has been a lot of Chaos DLC. There is a little bit fatigue. I don't personally feel that because I'm a big fan of Chaos stuff, but I think people want to see more Empire stuff, some missing Lizardmen stuff, and there is so much more that still could be done. I think the Glottkin will be an interesting lord choice. It just depends on what's going to happen in terms of how the mechanics will play. And this is what I've not been liking about the reveals lately. It's all, we'll tell you at the very last moment, which kind of sucks. I feel like we do know a little bit about Nagash because they did go into a lot of detail when it came to that reveal show. But all the other characters have been pretty much left in the dark. But I'm hyped for this, and I think you should be too. It's one of those big name characters, and at the end of the day, should be very powerful. I do feel like he's going to be one of the strongest ones. I know people are going to say, well, power creep and stuff, but keep in mind that this is essentially 3 characters in one. Something very hard-hitting, a strong commander, and also a wizard. It's going to be terrifying to see. Even then, with how Warriors of Chaos are, unless something drastically changes, they're kind of easy to deal with. It's only Archeon which is a problem, and then, you know, we've got the big Archeon, well, more so End Times rework, which we'll likely discuss in the future, because I do have some hopes and fears and the rest, right? But I'm excited for the Glottkin. It's just, I'd be more excited if they actually started giving out more details. Because, like, oh yeah, recruiting more demons isn't really a lot of detail. Creative Assembly also did post the usual, like, rumor engine stuff. They took that from Games Workshop, and it's pretty easy to tell at least one of them. The tentacle is very likely Gutrot Spume. It makes sense because Gutrot Spume shows up with the Blight Kings in the lore, and we know that we're getting the Blight Kings. That's been confirmed and showcased. There's 3 variants. So it'll likely be another Scar Bloodwrath situation, a legendary hero where he'll be able to, you know, boost up the Blight Kings, which, you know, they're already going to be very strong. So this is going to make them very terrifying, I assume. The other 3 aren't too clear. Now, I have seen a lot of people saying that it's very likely going to be the Magath Riders. You know, there were 3 other characters introduced for Nurgle, because Nurgle actually got the most out of the End Times back in the day. So they're basically just 3 extra characters. I don't know what's going to happen here. Either they get introduced as 3 individualized characters, which would mean quite a lot of legendary heroes. But there's not really that much else missing for Nurgle. I mean, they are basically pulling at strings by bringing in the Siege Giant and the Basilisk. There's literally not that much Chaos stuff left. Or they introduce them as a unit instead. So Magath Riders being the large units that could be acquired, which, I don't know. I don't think lore-wise there were a lot of Pox Magaths. Like, this is the mount themselves. We know that they actually do exist, and they are from Norsca, I think? But the only interpretation of the lore that we do have is the 3 Magath Riders. So Morbidex, Blobe, and Orgots. Or Orgots. Either way, like, I could see this happening, and the more I look at it and the more I see the Reddit subthread, yeah, this could potentially be this. So, yeah, that works. I mean, it was easier the last time when they were teasing, I guess, but they started moving stuff around. I mean, 4 potential legendary heroes. There is a legendary hero bloat for Chaos, but that's because there's just so many Chaos characters. I mean, if Creative Assembly just wanted to do character packs with legendary heroes, we could literally keep seeing content release for another decade. There's no word on a possible generic Lord and generic hero at the moment, which, I mean, if they're going to do 4 legendary heroes, again, just speculation at the moment, I don't imagine that we'll get a full Lord and hero, but there's not really anything missing, unless they decide to do like a Lord option like they did with the whole Skull Reaper situation, where we ended up getting that Chanter, which only existed in the lore for like a second, literally like a half a sentence. There's nothing like that from what I can see in the End Times books, but there might be something in the novellas or whatever. Half of my books are still basically just covered up at the moment. I do hope that we do end up with a Lord option though. You know, a Lord of Plagues. Back in the day you could get the fat Chaos Lord for Nurgle, which was very thematic. So having it to be quite good at melee, you know, because it's got its great weapon, but also able to buff up some troops would be nice. That gives you a different option. It's the same reason why Khorne has it. Like, Tzeentch doesn't, Tzeentch doesn't, but Nurgle being so popular, it'd be kind of cool to see it. Not a deal breaker if not, but again, just putting it out there, since Creative Assembly are still iterating on stuff, it seems. That's what they've mentioned in their last live stream. All that being said, I do wonder where they can put Glottkin as a starting position, right? So lore-wise, from the novella, which, by the way, probably one of the only books from the End Time series that won't want to make you claw your own eyes out. It's very well written and goes into the psychology of Chaos Warriors quite a bit. They'd be around the Sea of Claws area, right? Because that's how their story begins. You know, Nordlanders come up and attack their farms, and that's how they end up activating the mark. I don't know if a Norsca start is doable. It does make sense though. Keep in mind, during Tides of Torment, they decided to move Wulfric. He can come back, but it does mean that there is a open spot around Norsca. So that is the most lore-friendly start. The problem there is there's a lot of Nurgle factions altogether. You know, you've got Festus down there in the Brass Citadel, and then obviously Epidemius up north. The concentration of Nurgle factions might not leave it for a lot of replayability if you decide to play Nurgle and then play another Nurgle faction. Sure, they're all supposed to be very different, but the general outcome is the same. There's a few Nurgle minor factions. I think there's one in Lustria, one in the Southern Chaos Wastes, and there might be 1 or 2 more in other locations. But again, this is an issue with the map being too small. Which is slowly, well, it has actually been a lot faster catching up with Creative Assembly, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be a map expansion anytime soon. or at all for that matter. I don't think we're going to see any more, barring maybe for the Monkey King if he ends up becoming a DLC. Creative Assembly, for the most part, have stuck to the lore when it comes to start positions, so very likely Noska. Which is fine, but as a Warriors of Chaos faction, like, that's going to just be such a clusterfuck for the Warriors of Chaos factions fighting. You've got Azazel there. Obviously, Festus is incentivized to push up, but Festus does nothing. Hopefully, during the end times, we'll see like a little bit of an update. And I do want to talk about like the Warriors of Chaos as a whole in their own like dedicated video. But yeah, this is likely just going to be what's going to happen. But before anything, we do need to talk about the ever-growing problem of Tzeentch. So another Nurgle Lord is cool. That takes us up to what now? 5, essentially, with the Warriors of Chaos counting there. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of Nurgle, and I think a lot of people are. Tzeentch is getting woefully ignored. There's still 3, technically, 2 like monogod ones and 1 Warriors of Chaos faction. A lot of people have been asking about Egrim Van Horseman, and Creative Assembly seemingly like to acknowledge Egrim's missing powers at the moment, but it's getting kind of silly in a way. Mostly because like we ended up with a DLC with Bashiva, which, I mean, clearly didn't do too well. And I feel like it's about time, if they want to close the door with Chaos, they need to actually just close it properly. That can't happen without the release of Egrim Van Horseman in the form of maybe a character pack. There's not really that much missing now for Chaos, and even less so for Tzeentch. I don't know. Something needs to be done sooner rather than later, or else we're just not gonna see him appear. I don't know why they're taking so long. Maybe a redesign, because keep in mind, obviously, Egrim is a very old model, and they have to modernize him like they did with like Arbal, who looks amazing. But yeah, if we're going to go into an end time scenario, which we are, I feel like the next character pack, if there is going to be another one, I assume so, the next one has to be Egrim. Close the door to Chaos finally. There's not really anything else missing unless they decide to do a Beastmen DLC, which I very much doubt at this point. They'll use the excuse that the Beastmen have already gotten so much, and then start working on the stuff that's missing, like, you know, other Electicans and the rest. Just wanted to talk about that today alongside like the Nurgle stuff, because it just feels really out of... I think it's probably because like DLC has been taking so long, basically around a year each, which I can't believe we're still kind of dealing with the fallout from Shadows of Change and, well, mostly Hyenas. It's the Hyenas tax that's hurt us more than anything else. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for the Glottkin? I'm assuming so. Nurgle is so popular, it's actually really weird. Well, not weird in a bad way, but, you know, there are loads of Chaos Guards, and it seems like Nurgle gets a lot of attention. I mean, just look at 40k with the Death Guard range, right? And to be fair, the really cool stuff that came out for Age of Sigmar lately. And do you think Egrim is coming at any point? Because I'm honestly starting to lose hope. It is, yeah, the silence is deafening. Same thing as the Bretonnia rework that was promised many moons ago. Who knows? Maybe we'll see something, maybe we won't. Maybe this is all buying time for Hyenas 2, the last laugh. Who knows? But yeah, have a great day, guys. I'll see you all again very soon. The cafe project is almost done. It's almost done. I might have a stream at some point this week where it's literally just going to be basing 200 miniatures. We'll see if I can stomach that on camera. There's a heat wave coming apparently, so for those of you in Europe and Britain and the rest, make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon.